Hello, Internet, and welcome to the Deep Fried Neurons podcast. It is a podcast about things that I, your host, find extremely interesting. And today I brought you something weird, a slight change in tone in the podcast episode itself, but it's quite literally three incidents that I witnessed from where I was. I thought you would be interested in what my perspective was for reasons that are unknown to me. Hopefully this won't be boring, and if anybody has not guessed it yet, I am running out of time to create content. College has been exhausting. I'm going to reserve a slot on my podcast to complain about how exhausting college is. That's why the episodes have been coming late, and there has been struggle to do the stories over and over again, but deliberation will return. But having that said, I'm not gonna hold you for long. Just cue the fucking. Hello, my lovelies. It's Deep Fried Neurons with the 44th episode coming in 2 days later than it's supposed to. But better than not uploading an episode at all that week, right? Is that funny? I don't know if that's funny. This is not a funny podcast. What am I doing? Anyway, so today I'm not making an informative session per se. Because I haven't had the time to research for an informative session. Today's is more of a story. I don't know if I'll put this under education or entertainment. I'll decide at the time. Who gives a shit? Today I just thought of a really interesting concept of remembering information. It's sort of a conversation I had at a bar while everyone was drinking and I was toying around with Jenga, as to times when everyone was glued to the screen and everyone was talking about the same thing. As a child old enough to go to law school in 2019, I have 3 different instances that I can remember off the top of my head. Of course, there's more. There's a lot more, and a lot of you would have some more as well, as people from different experiences of times when people were completely glued to the screen and it was a big event or whatever. If you do, just mention it in the comments. Maybe we'll talk about it the next time on the podcast. But here I'm going to talk about the ones I remember, and that you'll have to bear the brunt of knowing now. Now, number 1. The first event that I remember, which was extremely, that left a print on my brain, and I remember distinct visions of people in hospital waiting rooms and people in offices and people in railway stations. Anywhere you could probably put a screen in a public place or even inside a house, a pan thela for that matter. A pan thela is a shop where you get beetle leaves. Is that a concept people are familiar with outside India? If you're not get familiar with that, we eat beetle leaves, and it's a hangout place for most people in smaller towns, if not in larger towns. I grew up in a small town, so there's that flex. So the first instance I remember of that happening was on 27th November 2008. Those of you have a sharp memory or lived in Mumbai around the same time would distinctly remember these days by a very particular date, the 26/11. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, the 26/11 was an attack on the city of Mumbai by Lashkar-e-Toiba. I'm not sure what the name of the group is, but I think 10 terrorists infiltrated India unseen by the Navy, and they attacked at different points in Mumbai, namely Nariman Point, Leopold Cafe, Oberoi Trident, and Taj Hotel. Taj Hotel being the centerpiece of all the chaos that went down. There were fire broken out. 166 people died, and I think 304 got injured from multiple nationalities. People from European and American passports were the prime hostages taken, but there's a lot more to discover there. I'll probably cover the entire story all by itself. But I remember I think I was 10 or 11 at the time, um, and 27th November I woke up. I had school at 8 o'clock in the morning. I did not check the news, and soon as the assembly started, the something happened. I think one of the male teachers, came running into the assembly, and he grabbed the attention of two of the teachers that were standing on the side. I think it was my PE teacher, and they went inside the staff room. I quite distinctly remember that. And after the assembly, the teachers told us what was happening on the day. It was a Thursday, if I remember correctly, and it was right before the Diwali holidays. Diwali holidays were about to begin, because I don't remember going to school on Friday, the day the siege ended. Um, or I think it might have been an important day, whatever it is. So it was around Diwali time, which is an auspicious festival in India, with quite a good story, by the way. We'll cover that as well. And most of South Mumbai was under attack, as in it was a proper siege on the city by 10 terrorists. People got killed, and people in the hospitals were being attempted to be killed. Leopold Cafe had 10 people dead. A beautiful place, which also bears the scars of the attack to this day. All in good time. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Of course, Taj Hotel, where the most casualties were numbered, and Trident, where the same was observed. I remember after the school was over earlier that day. I think 12 is when I left from school. Usually it's till 3, and I come home, and my dad's in the waiting room with the patients, looking at the screen. And till I got home, I saw my mom do the same thing in front of the TV, and the phone was constantly ringing. Um, that was the first impressionable memory I have of a live news event. And that didn't go away, because I went outside the house, and I remember I think the holidays had just started. So I was going to go meet my friends. Uh, every friend I went to pick up and sit with was in the living room with the rest of the family in front of the TV. Sometimes minus a dad, because the dad was outside working, but everybody was looking at the TV that day. And I was a little void of empathy for very obvious reasons. 11-year-olds or 10-year-olds or whatever, we don't really understand a lot of the world. My mom was just recovering from a pretty horrible accident that she'd gotten in about a year or two earlier. And I think altogether, I remember the only memory I have of my dad is like he wanted to call two of his friends in Mumbai. I don't want to reveal their names, because I know the internet could dox them. He was with them in med school. A Parsi gentleman who lives in the south, and another one who also lives in Mumbai. I've been to his house, but I'm so sorry, I don't remember where he lives. He remembered both of them, and three people really, both of his friends and one of his friends' wives, because he was in college with her as well. And that's the only memory I have of that day. On the 29th, I couldn't give a lot of care for it, but I remember that it was a huge deal even after that. About for a month, nobody could stop talking about 26/11. I'll cover the entire detailed story of 26/11 much later, I think it's a story we should get in and some people should remember. It's about, I think, this year will complete 11 years of the 26/11 attack and the scars it has left behind. I think some places have bullet holes still. Because I didn't go to Mumbai after that till 2013, which was to take another flight ahead. And the same is with, and I repeated the same thing till 2015, 16, 17, 18, but those times I actually recreationally moved around Mumbai. And it's a beautiful city, and it's a shame that what happened. Everybody, like in 2015 when I was there for a college fest, I remember everybody saying the same fucking thing, that they remember who, like where they were, they remember what they were doing, and they remember how far they were from the where the guns were unloaded. Every cab driver that we talked to in South Bombay, every time we went past Leopold Cafe, they told us about like how horrible it was that day, that they would just stood in shock. Like nobody drove cabs that day. Mumbai almost stopped working, which is rare. It came close, but it didn't. And that was quite memorable to me. Now fast forward to 4 years later in 2012. I think it might be December 6 or December 21. I'm not sure. But Kasab, the one terrorist that we arrested, like our government arrested during the attack, Mr. Ajmal Kasab, was hanged on 26th November 2012 in Yerwada, Pune, quite discreetly with no glorification, no nothing. Because one of the criticisms that came out after 2008's attack is that the media actually gave up the positions of every man that was holding the siege in Mumbai, like on the government's end, and that was helping the terrorists in delaying controlling the attack. Imagine that. um, so Kasab was hanged on 26th November 2012. I think 2 weeks after that, college had just reopened. It was a cold winter night when we heard about the Delhi rape case. 2 days later, maybe. And the third day, I hope it was just a coincidence because there were 21 students out of 58 in my class. And I was what? 15, so 9th or 10th grade, something like that. I hope it was just the beginning of the college and people hadn't showed up. There were 21 people, 1 girl, and 20 boys that day. And it was very close to Christmas. So might actually have been because the holidays were approaching that this number was less. But I remember the principal distinctly announcing condolences, and not condolences, but her horror and the silence in the air was being addressed by her when the Jyoti Singh case happened. Everyone knows what happened in December 2012. I don't need to spell it out. It's the wake up call about the rape culture in this country, which is, I mean, still relevant. It's not over, but at least there was a turning point. There was a moment in time when the entire country decided, you know what, we got to be better than this. And finally, the IPC was forced to mention certain acts which would count as a rape in this case. And the same, I think I read about it the morning because I was reading a newspaper by this time. My mom told me not to think about it, but everybody when I went to school was talking about it. And her entire treatment was being viewed by everybody around town. We used to play cricket at this point I wasn't playing cricket actually. I was hanging out with people who were playing cricket or whatever, and there was a pan thela right next to the place that we used to play. And I distinctly remember hearing them talk about how Jyoti Singh is being moved to Singapore and how much bleeding there is and how gruesome this crime is and whatnot. There is a series called Delhi Crime about this exact case, and it is one of many cases which sparked national outrage about rape. But this was the first one. This was the one that opened the floodgates for allegations and talking about rape. Unluckily for all of us in India, the fight against rape or rape as a crime hasn't stopped, and it's extremely common. Uh, the one good thing to come out of this is that the report of rape incidents has significantly increased, which I believe is a good thing. And I hope that the necessity for report goes away faster. But that's one thing that imprinted on my mind pretty heavily. Like as a teenager, that was the one that I will never forget. Like I remember that morning, I remember that evening, and I remember that night. Um, the night was in particular the one where she was declared dead, and I think I was watching Thappar's show on NDTV or History India, and he said, and it was quoted in the media quite literally in these words: India has lost a daughter today, and I remember my parents being completely horrified. Nobody talked at dinner that night. And the last entry, I know it's such a change in pitch, but I have to do this because that's how my brain functions, and I thought that it would be interesting, that you would think this is interesting, um, for information to be clubbed. This is not horrible at all. The last one where I saw people being glued to the TV is not horrible at all. This is actually a pretty big fresh breath of air for you after two horrible incidents of the 21st century in this country. Is the date of 22nd July 2019, and I remember that very clearly because it was about now, not 22nd July, 22nd June. I'm sorry. I was traveling back to where I live uh, after a visit to the family, and I was taking a flight. It was a late night flight. Incidentally, the World Cup was on, and it was India versus Afghanistan. If you don't know anything about cricket, I don't blame you, neither do I. But I know that people in this country, everywhere, like every nook and cranny, in every corner of this country, you will find a cricket fan. The World Cup was on, and India had not made it into the finals yet, and it was supposed to be a cakewalk match. India versus Afghanistan. India is a top tier World Cup team who's won T20 once and the World Cup twice, if I'm not wrong. They've had some of the most legendary players in the sport, from what the fans of the sport tell me. I don't know. I don't know a lot of. I don't know a lot of foreign fans like England or New Zealand or Australia. I don't know a lot of people from there who watch cricket. Uh, but from what I've heard, from what I've seen, India's not the worst team out there. So there's that. Um, the Indian team was supposed to have a cakewalk when it was against Afghanistan. Afghanistan should have not stood a chance against India, but but Afghanistan made 213 runs. India made only 224 runs in what, 4 hour or 50 overs, which is a half a day, and that's not a lot considering how the Indian team has been rolling for the past 5, maybe 10 years. That's not a good score, not against Afghanistan. They should have crossed 300, is what most people who watch cricket tell me. And then the Afghani batting side opened up, and they were good. Now, that's where the kicker starts, because it looked like the Afghani team might be able to defeat the Indian team, and it would be a big time win for the captain of the team and the team itself, because Afghanistan is not considered to be a very good cricket team as of now. The fact that they got the Indian team to actually strive to win is quite commendable at the level that they were playing. And that's why the entire country was watching the screen. I remember the guy who did my security check held the line for the last over. He was like, I'm not doing anything until this match gets over. And on the second last ball, the last wicket of Afghanistan fell on 213 runs. And that's after that, the entire airport resumed to normalcy. But you know what? I can't remember an incident where I was traveling while the World Cup was happening, because everybody had plans. I remember my friends came over to my place to watch the 2012 World Cup that we won. Not 2012. Which World Cup did we win? I remember it was a big deal. Like, my entire neighborhood had gathered at my place to watch the match. I was quite young, still in school, not even 9th grade, maybe 8th grade, 7th grade. Might have been 2013. We'll know. Somebody will post it in the comments to let me know. But there was that. And I just found it very intriguing that this is what the country stops for. A terror attack. A very institutionalized, socially ingrained, heinous crime. And a cricket match. And that's all I wanted to share with you. I hope this wasn't too bad. And I hope I don't have to work a lot in the post for editing. Okay, everyone, that's all I have for you this week. And, well, good news is for people who've been looking for a longer podcast episode, no names mentioned. The next episode might just be pretty long, because the guys from Bad and Bollywood are going to be here on my podcast discussing something that's completely out of their niche. So Yashasvi and Karan are the guys who are doing the podcast, and one thing led to another. We met, and like they were very gracious, and they hosted me on their podcast. We watched Josh, the movie from 2000 with Shah Rukh Khan, Aishwarya Rai and Chandrachur Singh on the cast, along with Sharad Kapoor. What the fuck happened to Sharad Kapoor, dude? And then we just talked about it for 90 minutes. I'm going to leave a link in the description for that episode. It's called Bad and Bollywood. And they were very kind to me, and they invited me on their podcast and let me waste time with them. However, the memes that came out of that were pretty spicy. If you haven't noticed yet, then Chandrachur Singh is daddy now. So, yeah, check that